We've got another great story to share with you today, an inspiring journey into local government leadership, because that's what we do here on the Halting Winter podcast. We tell the stories behind the titles, the unique paths into public service, and the moments that shape how these leaders show up, even when the work gets heavy. Every day, local government quietly makes modern life possible, and behind every service is a person doing work that often goes unseen. This is the Halting Winter podcast, and I'm Seth Winterhalter. Every week, I have the pleasure of sitting down with local government leaders from across the country that remind us where government really lives, locally, doing the work that truly matters. This is the work that builds belonging. Before we hear today's conversation, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Tyler Technologies has been exclusively serving the public sector since 1998, partnering with cities and counties to make their work more manageable, more connected, and more effective. From smarter budgeting to artificial intelligence, Tyler equips local governments with software and solutions that help leaders serve with clarity, efficiency, and impact. You can explore a variety of free resources at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. And if today's conversation resonates with you, I want to invite you to check out the Municipal Leadership Development Circle. It's a global community of local government leaders who are committed to growing together, supporting one another, and leading well in the middle of municipal pressure. You can learn more about the MLDC at haltingwinter.com/MLDC. That's haltingwinter.com/MLDC. And now, let's turn to today's conversation. My guest on the podcast today is Monica Dupee, City Manager in Westerville, Ohio. Monica, it is a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you, Seth. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I am glad to have more people from Ohio. We've had Chris Gilbert on in Springfield Township, and we just had, is it Jeff? I'm going to mess up his last name. Jeff Brubeck, I think. He was on the other week. And so it's always fascinating to see these Midwest, especially the upper kind of central Midwest, Ohio, Michigan, even some Illinois. And in fact, your story is kind of between these two states. We've got Michigan, we've got Ohio, Indiana even it kind of comes into play. You forget, I think I'm from the West Coast. You forget how close everything is and how out here, it's like, Washington's so in the corner of, the United States. And so everything's like far to drive to. Whereas you can be in multiple states in just a couple hours.
Absolutely.
In the Midwest. So anyway, I look forward to unpacking. You've been in Michigan and Ohio. You've been in multiple cities of all kinds of sizes. And so it'll be very interesting, I think, to hear your perspective on what's not different. I think that's one of the things. We can have a lot of assumptions, right? On like, oh, it's a town of 5,000 or it's a town of 50,000. And you can kind of have these assumptions that bigger is harder or smaller is easier. And every city has complexities and unique variables about them, doesn't it?
For sure. Yes.
Well, I look forward to diving into that. Before we dive into the professional career, we're going to do what we do. Let's go back and get to know you as a person, hear about kind of what shaped your early years. Tell us about where you were born and kind of the childhood that shaped you.
Sure. So I was actually born in Northwest Ohio, which I was actually probably closer to Michigan and Indiana than I was to most major cities in Ohio. Grew up the youngest of 5 kids on the family farm, but not, we leased the farmland out, so we didn't farm it ourselves. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents and my siblings, and my grandparents were from the Depression era, World War II, so I heard lots of stories about being practical and, how to churn, a potato sack into a t-shirt and and all these interesting things that you learn as a young age. My family was very deep in service. So my dad was in the Navy during Vietnam and then was a postal worker for his entire career. My mom was a secretary for juvenile probation for the county. So I spent a lot of time in the county courthouse. My grandfather was a clerk for a township in the townships that I grew up in. So without even knowing it, I was surrounded by public service pretty much from the day I was born.
Mm.
Yeah. And it kind of just deeply got embedded in me. I was hypnotized at a young age.
So what that is so fascinating, especially what's unique is county. You know, you usually
Yeah.
hear like, we've had a couple of people who town clerks were, kind of in their family, either grandmothers or mothers. But the county is such a unique environment because I really think most people don't even know about their local government and, their cities and what's going on with all the service it provides. But I really, unless you, I guess, get married and have to figure out what county you live in, most
Right.
people might know what county because, you'll hear on the news or something, but that's it. It's like, oh, I live in
Yeah.
this county, but they have no idea what a county does. So what was your kind of awareness then? It's one thing to, be with mom, as she's working or what that is, but how much awareness did you have of local government, kind of what it was provided and what was that itch? What was kind of what was the thing that you were like, okay, there's something here?
I just always kind of felt at home when I was in the courthouse hanging out with my mom and the people around her. I actually initially thought I was going to be a lawyer, so it like helping people was a non-negotiable, but how I was going to help people, I hadn't quite decided, at 6 years old. So I just throughout time just always had a pulse on making sure giving back to the community was going to be part of my career choice.
Mm. It's so interesting how, again, the lessons we learn growing up, obviously by what we're around, what we're experiencing, what we're seeing, but also the dynamics of family. Like you said, I love that you kind of attribute this. You kind of, you really got to stretch the dollar, these
Yeah.
lessons you have from family. And again, you're a family of five, like, there's a lot of mouths to feed and
Yeah.
you're the
Yeah.
youngest. Talk to us a moment about the way you think now, looking back over the
Hmm.
career you've had. What do you think as you're the youngest in a family of five kids? What do you
Yeah.
think you kind of brought with anything that you look back and go, oh, I see how that might have shaped me. You can
Oh,
think
are you
as
kidding me? Yeah, my whole life. Yeah, I mean, you've got to be competitive and tenacious and self-reliant and independent and strong and, all those things, but also be able to be compassionate and empathetic at the same time. And I think without even knowing, that's what coming from a really big family teaches you is like, um, how to really stand at what your core values are, but be able to learn and be more flexible on things that aren't your non-negotiables.
it's interesting, isn't it? Because again, you could make two kind of pendulum assumptions. You can look at the youngest kid in a family of
Oh,
five
yeah.
and go, oh,
Right.
that's the baby. They've never had to work for anything in their life. They get
Right,
doted
yeah.
on. Or you could go, the other side of that pendulum is they were the last one to get anything because all the
Yeah,
older siblings,
like,
they were the
I had
first
to
to.
wrestle for dinner,
Right,
like,
exactly right.
"Get out of my way."
Because it is kind of interesting. Like I look at I have four kids. I look at my youngest Gabe, and I have two daughters are the oldest, and then another son above Gabe, and even Sam, when our third youngest, when he was born, he was just the girls just doted on him. I don't think
Oh,
he
sure.
walked until he was like 3 because like he was brought everything he wanted in life. They just loved him to death.
Yeah.
Versus like, and now Gabe, it's a little different because he's much younger than the other three,
Mhm.
and he's just got a radically different personality too. So it is kind of interesting. I would normally not think of a youngest to be a key leader like you've become like a
Sure.
CEO of cities. Usually that's the
Yeah.
oldest. That's the one who has to like, be
Yeah.
the parent is there a family of five. So it's just
Yeah.
unique how different lives. And that's why I say
Yes.
the reason I actually bring that up is to say, if you're young, you're fighting through a lot of identity and you're fighting
Mm.
through a lot of other people's assumptions.
Oh,
That
yes,
could be an
absolutely.
assumption for you to go, oh, well, I'm sure you face assumptions your whole life. Oh, you're a female. Oh, you're this, you're that. You can't be this. And
Mhm.
maybe even before we get to your story, maybe even speak to that. How have you wrestled with the assumptions of others and kind of the limitations of others? How do you, because I think your story is a story of breakthrough. How now looking back, and even as you're about to head off to college in the story here. How have you dealt with those pressures and those even frustrations?
Yeah. Um, to say that that has not been a part of my life would be a giant lie. I would say I'm sure everyone deals with other people's assumptions or, putting their story on you. Um, like you said, being the youngest, being a little girl. So obviously, like daddy's little girl, being the youngest, you got away with everything. No, not even close. um, but, I think that the most important thing is always coming back to that core value of who you are, who you want to be, and making sure that you're living that as authentically as possible, even at a very young age, because, people are going to tell you you can't do things. Um, and, my whole life, my mother raised me to be a lady, which I laughed at every time she tried. She's trying to be a lady because I am not going to sit quietly in the corner and let, other people be harmed. That's just not in my personality. Um, and I always thought being independent was actually a bad thing. My mom used to call me her wickedly independent child. And so I thought it was a bad thing. It ended up being a great thing. And throughout my whole life, I ended up leading in different ways that I didn't know was leadership. So, I'd be on the school council, I would be the co captain of the soccer team. I led the percussion section of our band and did indoor drumline and like all these things that a typical young female shouldn't be able to do. Um, it was almost like, oh yeah, I'll show you. Like that's just like kind of the competitive attitude I had my whole life and kind of still have, unfortunately. I try not to be as competitive anymore, but it's pretty ingrained.
Well, I think that's part of the wiring that you have in discovering. It sounds like you early on you had some intentionality about being self aware and about being kind of not trying to fit yourself to others. And I think that's why, again, I love the podcast to encourage young people. Like, you've got to find you, and I love that it's not just about finding you; it's also about then uh, leaning into how you're wired and being comfortable with that, even when other people kind of go, oh well, that's not, I just look at today's culture, and again, politics, right, left, I'm not even concerned. There are things going on that I think make people feel like they've got to just be one way or the other, right? Whatever kind of people you're around. And I think what's important is you being you, because that's the American story. I think is the variety, and it's that variety that allows ingenuity and creativity, and that's how you build a team. You don't build a team by having the same kind of people on the team. You build a team by having a lot of variety and difference, and allowing those people to kind of, in kind of healthy conflict, work on something great.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so how did again, in your story, you're gonna leave the farm, the ranch, and you're gonna head to the University of Detroit. Even talk about,
Yeah,
maybe give a perspective of, because when again, assumptions, I grew up on the
sure.
ranch in the middle of nowhere. So when I
Yeah.
left to go to Missouri, people were like, a different state, like, who are you, how, and then when I went to New York, it was even crazier. It's like, this guy's lost his marbles. What
Right.
was it like? Give us a little picture of not just the farm, but kind of the town you were in. How big was it, and then what was it like to go to the University of Detroit for your undergrad?
Yeah, so very small town. I think at the time, maybe 6,000 residents, um, and very tight knit. Everyone knew each other, kind of on the Mayberry side, I actually chose Detroit because it was the exact opposite of anything that I grew up around. I mean, the diversity in my town was really like Hispanic Americans and then a bunch of us white folk. And so I really wanted to better understand what the real world looked like. And I felt like nothing like getting smacked across the head with a little Detroit could really show you other sides of the perspective, and definitely true. Definitely culture shock, lots of lessons learned. It was a really important part of my personal growth to take that big leap.
And what was, and you go to University of Detroit for your undergrad. You're going to study poli-sci. So it seems like maybe talk to two things. It seems like you kind of know you're going to be in at least government, maybe, or in political. Like, what? Maybe tell us about what you thought you were going to do at the
Sure.
beginning of your undergrad, and then what did you think by the end of it?
Because
But
it's
also,
never the same, right?
exactly, totally. That's part of the journey, right? But also maybe about that. How did that experience open your eyes, not only the diversity of culture, but Detroit's an interesting, because you're going to be in Detroit at the kind of the turn of the century, where Detroit's one of these cities that we kind of hear about it in the news and whatnot, but it's really gone through the ringer, as it's a quintessential. I think it's an important conversation as we look at AI, and everyone's kind of like, oh, AI is going to change the world. Detroit was changed because auto manufacturing and all these things kind of left this massive void. I mean, we know the towns that the mine will close or the lumber mill will close, and they go from 5,000 to ghost towns. Detroit is a major city. I mean, this is one of America's major cities, and to be there going to school, and even, sometimes the school can be in a bubble. What was it like? Did you have an awareness of what was going on in the city, and how did that shape what you were experiencing in your undergrad?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Where the campus is located is in a very, it's better now, but it was definitely in a very scary part of Detroit. And um, even when my parents dropped me off, there was a subway right across the street that had burnt down, and the building was still just sitting there in its blackness of like being charred. And my mom was like, "We'll turn around. We'll go right back right now. You don't have to stay." And I was like, "No, this is what I want. This is where I wanna be." Um, yeah, I think it was really interesting because it was right at the time when Detroit was thinking of going bankrupt. And I think in our profession for a very long time, one thing we used to say is, in the public sector, we can't go bankrupt. So that's why we're different than the private sector. Well, then Detroit came along and taught us you can go bankrupt. And it was just really an interesting time to be there and to see um, kind of the cultural shift that was happening, and how almost the private sector had to step in to save sections of Detroit and like buy up entire blocks, pay their own private security. You couldn't depend on the police department because they were so busy. I actually got my identity stolen at an event, and I did all the investigation, tracked down where I thought the people were, and the police department just laughed at me. They're like, "We're dealing with 50 homicides right now. We don't really care about your identity being stolen."
Wow.
And so it's just like, you know, learning about what the real world can be like and watching that unfold. I guess I jumped straight into the Detroit story, but I actually went to college half days in high school. I thought I was going to be a social worker.
Mm.
Um, and then after a couple classes, I was like, no, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer, and I'm going to save everybody. And, I'm going to be the Wonder Woman of justice, and, that kind of feeling. So that's why I went and got my poli-sci degree. I also got a certificate in legal studies. And when I graduated, everybody I graduated with was going to law school. Like, even my biochem friends were going to law school, and like everyone. And I was like, whoa, I'm about to not get paid.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to saturate the market, and I am not going to make any money at all. And I've got, 100,000 in student loans here I got to pay off. What am I going to do? Um, so I actually just Googled like what to do with a poli-sci degree, and my choices were move to Washington D.C. or this cool little career called public administration. And I was like, what is public administration? So I looked into it, and it's like, um, it's like a professional who is the mayor who gets to do all these cool things, and impact people and be really close to the people and make a big difference. But you don't have to get elected because you're not a politician. You get to do it based on like facts and, like what the community wants. And I was like, oh, that's me. Let's do that. And so I just decided to hit that path, and Very first class I took, I got an internship, and it just took off from there.
April is National County Government Month. It's a time to recognize the amazing work counties do to keep our communities running. From public safety and courts to health services, infrastructure, and everything in between, counties carry an enormous responsibility, and they do it in ways most people never see. And right now, one of the biggest conversations happening across county and local government is how artificial intelligence can help support that work. You know who's helping lead that conversation in local government? That's right, it's Tyler Technologies. Tyler's been helping counties and local governments apply AI in some significant ways, streamlining routine tasks, improving access to information, and helping staff spend more time focused on serving their communities. To help leaders understand what's possible, Tyler has released a brand new ebook. It's called AI for Impact: Proven Results for Government. It highlights inspiring examples of organizations already using AI to strengthen operations, to improve insights, and to make government services easier for residents to navigate. The best part, that ebook is free. You can download it today at tylertech.com/winter. Again, that's tylertech.com/winter. Now, back to the conversation. Oh my, the power of Google.
Yes, exactly.
I totally resound with this because I had always wanted, in sixth grade, I think a lot of times in kind of that middle school time, you'll do kind of a law thing. My kids are doing it. In fact, my youngest daughter is doing it here this next month, where they mock trial, they call it, and they, take sides, and they gotta, and I remember doing that. And I was like, this is it. And I can't remember what show I watched as a kid, but I do remember when Boston Legal came out, Denny Crane and whatever the other guy's name was. I was like, oh gosh. And then you find out, I talked to a very famous lawyer, and he was like, I've been in court once. He's like,
I know.
Settle outside of court. Like what you see on TV is not court. And I'm like, that sounds lame.
You're like, that's boring.
Exactly. Like,
yeah.
I want to have the speeches and the, and so, but you're right. Like a lot of people were influenced. I wonder if that was shows or what that was. But like you said, in fact, he told me if I wanted to go into law, the best thing I can do is not have a poli-sci degree, because it won't make you stand out to a firm. He said you should have an auxiliary, some kind of degree that sets you apart, that might, make your brain, think in a different way, or maybe you can connect to different clientele. And I thought, oh, that's fascinating.
Funny.
I would have never.
Yeah.
So I love that Google helps you. What do I do with
Google
this?
saved the day.
Right? How unique. And so you start an MPA. Let's talk about Wayne State University, their MPA program, and how you're going to, I love that you said that you start with an internship. Talk about what the internship was. Not all internships are awesome and great. I hope they are. I'm on a mission to make them, really, how can we make them awesome? Because we don't want to just, stack papers in the corner. We want our internships to really give, because local government's so expansive. There's so many opportunities to help, but also to learn. What was it like to see now, while you're kind of doing the headwork of an MPA, to get your hands dirty with how a city really works behind the curtain?
So I always say I would not have gotten where I was without this internship. I was blessed to be put with a gentleman named John Lamorato. He was over finance and administration, and he let me do everything from the smallest detail to like literally huge budget projects that eh, long story, it was it was 2008, 9, in that time when, the recession hit, and in Michigan, all their revenue is property tax. So he was like, after I had earned his trust, he's like, hey, Monica, forecast if the economy keeps on the same path, how much are we going to have to cut out of our general fund to stay solvent? And so I did that forecast, and we worked through it together. And then he's like, okay, now figure out how to make that happen. So I got to interview every department. I got to talk about what was necessary, what was needed, and what was wanted, and then figure out how to cut the wanted parts so that we could stay where we needed to be. And long story short, lots of people got early retirement payouts. Then we reorganized the entire organization and cut $23 million out of the general fund. as an intern. I
Wow.
know, like the just the amount of trust he had in me and allowed me to run with it. I mean, I can't say enough for him and his trust in me, and that's the reason why I was able to climb the ladder so quickly. He really taught me a lot. And the best part about being in class and having an internship is I would walk in and be like, John, our budget class says this in the book. And he's like, throw that in the trash. That's garbage. You're never going to use that.
Well,
It's like, okay.
that's what's so helpful, I think, really
Yeah,
about all kinds of positions. I think that college is due, and for many reasons, for a radical reset. But I do think, because this is the way people used to learn. I mean, for generations and centuries, it was you would apprentice. And then college became a thing. And I think college is good in education in a formalized, scholastic, environment is good, but that internship, like you say, it makes the real world, and that's the issue, especially with education, is we can create this bubble where people are like, oh no, this is the way to think, and it's like, that doesn't work in the real world though. That's great in a
exactly.
laboratory of thought, but this
Yeah.
is not the way it works when the rubber hits the road and you have a recession and you have real people
Yeah.
with real weights
Well,
and
just add
pressures.
people to the equation, right? I mean, people in general, we're such interesting creatures, and the things that we come up with and the barriers we put in our own way, it's incredible the things that humans can they really just screw up that bubble that.
Totally. And it's not like one of the things I think that points this out the clearest. Uh, every time there's a storm that comes, when you go to the store, what's always gone? The bread and the milk.
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time I had a sandwich. I went, why is bread so like
I
even
don't
with
know.
COVID, people were buying like, the Costco multi-pack of toilet paper, like they
Yes.
were never going to use the rest of it again. And I'm just like, I think there are other things I would choose to stock up on.
Seriously.
But
Yeah.
again, it's that mentality. And I'm sure you experienced that in 2008 when you have something like that recession, when you go through things like the pandemic, people kind of freak out. And then we became, because of fear's this powerful motivator. So I'm sure you see this. This is why it's so unique. Like you say, the classroom can teach, hey, this is how you would handle a problem like a budget issue. Well, people are people, and it takes one dominant person on an elected council to say, no, this is what we're going to protect, regardless of maybe your community says, unless they get voted out. So there's all these dynamics, isn't there? There's all these things that make this is where you can have all the education you want, but until you really are in the seat that you're in today as city manager, having to make real decisions with real weights from, I call it the three-headed snake of local government. You've got staff, and you have skilled department heads who want their programs and their things. You've got community members, you've got electeds, and none of those, that's a lot of snakes and talking heads trying to get the attention of what they value and what they want. So it's a never I'm sure that you have a lot of really fun, exciting days, but there's a lot of pressure too. So
Yes.
let's well, we're going to talk forever. There's so many good
I
things.
know.
So here you go. You finished the internship in this MPA program.
Hmm.
And now you're trying to get a job while the recession is happening.
Yeah.
You land in Imlay City, but
Hmm.
you're not going to be, the city doesn't necessarily hire you. You come on as this downtown development program executive director. Talk about how you even found that and
Yeah.
how you get to Imlay City.
So I'm going to sound a little cliche. I followed a boy up to the thumb of Michigan, and there's not a whole lot going on in the thumb of Michigan to find a job. So I was commuting 3 hours a day back and forth to the Metro Detroit area. And then this position came up, and it was actually, I think I graduated on a Sunday and I started on a Monday, which was perfect. And economic development meets Chamber of Commerce meet just event planner. It's a lot of a lot. Grant writer. Um, so it's a lot of like small business, walking door to door, building relationships, then putting on farmers markets, then doing movies in the park, and then, you know, um, balancing a budget and trying to raise money, which I learned very quickly I hated doing. Um, so yeah, it was just like the jack of all trades, and you're the only person, and your volunteer board of directors, and you're just running around hustling, trying to make it happen, and for not a lot of money, working 80 hours a week. It was
Mm.
the perfect first job, right?
Well, just like that internship where you get exposed to, right, every department and all this work,
Yeah.
these kind of positions, these nonprofit positions, where basically the staff is volunteers that you have to create.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
everything's on your plate, and
Yep.
they can be overwhelming, but they can also give you experience to it. Not only a lot of different things, but I like how you said, I found out something that I didn't like to do. I
Yeah.
don't like
Not a good
that.
rate. I don't raise money well.
You
That
don't.
is not, no.
And guess what? Part of that, I think, just to encourage young people again, which I love doing, you should find things that you don't like to do. And you
Yeah.
should find things that you like to do. That helps you narrow down. You want a life of purpose and impact. And that means you need to find out what your skills really are and what you don't like and what you're not good at so that you can kind of continually define yourself. And because it's not good, I think this idea, be a jack of all trades, I just don't think that's actually good advice. I think that leads to a life where a lot of pressure for you. I felt that as a pastor, right? It's kind of similar nonprofit work, lead pastor, growing church. And I just felt like I had to be everything. I had to be the best counselor. I had to be the best speaker. I had to be the best event planner. I had to be the best at all these things. And man, my life was just overwhelming because
Yeah.
I wasn't the best. And there was definitely things I didn't like to do and didn't want to be doing, but I felt like I had a responsibility as the lead guy to be all these things to all people. And it doesn't help you actually lead a good team. It doesn't help you develop team. It doesn't help you learn how to say no and probably set some boundaries. I'm sure that was
Oh, for
impossible in
sure.
that position.
Yeah.
So you're going to do this for a couple, 3-4 years, and again, you're an hour north of Detroit. This is Imlay's a smaller city, I think around 3,700 people.
Yep.
The next, you're actually going to start working for a city. You're going to become the assistant to the city manager in the city of Troy. I mean, going from 3,500 to almost 90,000 people. What was that? What was that like? Not only to go to this is a northern, it's a suburban city, right, of Detroit.
Yep.
Many of us know Troy, famous basketball team, I think, in Troy, and a university there, maybe. Tell us about what it was like to now work for a city as especially the assistant to the city manager. And at this time, did you know, like, were you like, I want to become a city manager, or was that not quite on the radar yet?
Yeah. So I definitely knew I wanted to be the city manager. That was through my master's program. Actually, my mentor used to come in every single day and be like, "Are you sure? Because people kind of suck. Are you sure you want to do this?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure." Um, so actually, my internship was in Troy, and so I had written that whole, you know, um, general fund plan. Um, I was gone for a couple of years. They couldn't hire me because we did a hiring freeze, obviously, as part of the plan. So they reached out to me a couple of years later and was like, "We need you to come back. We need you to teach us how to do your plan." And so that's what I got to do. They hired me back as assistant to the city manager, coordinator of continuous improvement. 'Cause they wanted to make it sound fancy. And so my job was to implement that plan and to keep looking at ways that we can keep that high level of service without um, having to pay for it, I guess is the way to like, that was very much the do more with less era where it was like local governments need to learn how to do more with less. And it's like you can only do that for so long. And then then you're doing less with less because you cut too much stuff. But yeah, so that's what I got to do. I got to come back and implement the plan I wrote as an intern. And, um, it was a really hard time because I knew all these people, but I also had to work on laying people off and retiring people. And I had to take over the pension plan because I retired one of the guys who ran the pension plan. So I had to learn how to run a pension plan. And it was crazy, but great. It learned a lot of really great stuff. And it quickly led to my next ring on the ladder. And I just kept climbing.
it must have been so validating. Again, you're there as an intern, you getting to do some big projects, but you're an intern. You never know, like,
Right.
what they're really going to use and what they're
Sure.
just saying.
Ends up in the
groups.
trash, right?
Yeah. And yet you're called back. Hey, your thing was good. We need you to like figure out how do we actually make that happen? How
Yeah.
incredibly validating. And what a cool opportunity. Oftentimes, I mean, that's kind of the work in, you got it when you work for a city. One of the things I think, especially for the city manager, where, 10 years, oftentimes 3 to 4 years, you can be on a lot of different timelines of a project. You might be on the ideation side, the creation and beginning side, the middle, the end, and you can just kind of figure out and move with it. And so how cool to actually have thought of something, created it, and then come back and been able to kind of put it into motion and seen it play out in action. I'm sure you learn from that too, because it's one thing to think of an idea. It's another then to kind of have to test it and go, oh, where does it move and how does it maintain pliability?
Yes. And the thick skin that has to come with some of these really big decisions. And, if someone's yelling in your face because you have to let them go because there's just no money to pay for the position anymore, that is a life lesson right there for sure. And trying not to take it personally either, because it's their worst day. Like there is nothing worse than getting laid off, and being the person to do it is bad, but being the person to receive it, I can't even imagine what that does to somebody's heart. So, yeah, it was a learning lesson.
And maybe you can speak to this, because you're talking about, one of the things with local government is I try to say this is very missional work. Like the work that you do impacts people on a daily basis, and you don't really see that at the state level, especially the higher you go in government to the federal level. Like how does it, these are these policies, and it's just it can be paperwork, and you don't really see the impact. Local gov, you every day you're not only seeing the impact of the infrastructure you're building and the services you're delivering, but also in the cool times, the festivals, the parades, the Christmas tree lightings. But that means then when there are tough times and tough decisions to make, like you say, I'm sure it would be incredibly hard to tell. Because when you're saying you have to let people go, yeah, there's budget issues, but again, it's like, but I can do better, or I can, and it's like,
right, yeah,
no, like we just
I can
don't
fix it.
yeah, and so I would imagine maybe how any insights there, because I think one of the things that can hold up a culture organizationally can be because we don't have hard conversations. It's because we don't know how to do conflict. Any lessons you learn there and having to embrace that at a young age, like these are hard conversations. Anything you give to our audiences, how do you do communication with that? How do you not even just deliver, but how do you sit with it as a leader to go, I have to do this. It falls on me.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of work that has to be done that leads up to those tough conversations. So there has to be a relationship there, even prior to having those conversations. And I think the way I phrase it that helps me the most is talking about compassion and kindness. It is incredibly compassionate to let someone know when they're not meeting your expectations. It is incredibly kind to let them know that they did not meet the deadline and that you're disappointed. Because the worst thing you could do is try and be nice and not talk about it. Because being nice and not talking about it puts all of that stress on you. You're the one who's upset. You're the one who's carrying it. You're the one who's holding it. And the other person may be completely clueless that you're even upset because you didn't take the time to be kind and compassionate and tell them, hey, you missed this deadline. It made all of these other things miss their deadline. This is not a good thing, and we need to get on the same page and move forward together. It's something I share with my team all the time. We are going to be a team of kindness, not niceness. There is a big difference, and I expect you all to be very kind to each other.
Let me ask you something. If culture really matters in your organization, Why isn't it being built with intention? Not discussed, not delegated, actually built and then sustained with just as much intention. Here's the hard reality. Culture isn't what your organization believes. It's what your leaders tolerate, reward, and repeat. In most cities and counties, they say culture matters while leaving it completely to chance. That's why this April, we are doing something different. Inside the Municipal Leadership Development Circle, you know it as the MLDC, we're kicking off a 3-month deep dive into organizational culture. Weekly content, conversations with leaders across North America, and live training sessions from the Leadership and Culture program. We're going to work through the ideas and insights from books like Turn the Ship Around, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and Unreasonable Hospitality. But more importantly, we're going to translate those insights into how you actually lead your team in the unique context of local government. For the first time, we're opening this up in a big way. We're offering 500 memberships to the MLDC for just $500. That gives you full access to the MLDC, the weekly content, and the vibrant community of leaders from across North America. But here's where it's really over the top. We're giving 3 months of insider access to the Leadership and Culture program. That's a $2,500 value. We're doing this because transforming City Hall from the inside out isn't just optional, it is necessary, and it's necessary right now. But here's the catch. We kick off our first live training session on the topic of culture on Thursday, April 16th. And so once the 500 spots are gone, they're gone. So if you're ready to stop talking about culture and to actually start building it, I want you to head over to haltingwinter.com/MLDC. That's haltingwinter.com/MLDC, or simply just use the link in the show notes. Secure your spot today. Now, back to the conversation. That is incredible. I love that. We're talking about, we're starting a 3-month focus on culture in our leadership development group right now. And I'm doing a ton of prep work and reading and prepping all the webinars we're having, and that is a theme that comes up over and over. Yes, we try to be nice, and what it means is we're not communicating clearly. We're letting things slide, and then what happens is it's kind of like in any relationship. I'm sure, I did a ton of marriage counseling, and it seemed like it's always like we allow, and then we explode.
Yes.
And so you have a fight with your spouse about something that's not even the point, right? It's years in the making, and then you're trying to, and then the other person's like blindsided because it's like, oh, we're just always late. Like that was a big thing I remember in my with my ex when early in our marriage, like in the first 5 years, it was like late is like 5 minutes early. Right. And to her, late is like 3 hours late. And so I was one of the things I was like, and it was just but I kind of always just kind of put up with it, and I didn't communicate. And then when I finally did communicate 3 years in, she was like, what? This is the way we've always done it. It was like, oh, this is on me. Like I'm to blame here because I was trying to be nice and just brush it off. But I created a reality. I created a rhythm for us that frustrated me, but I never really articulated that in any health. And so that's not her fault. That's mine. Like, and I think that's where, like, again, that niceness, it's, oh, we're late for meeting. Our meetings always start 5 minutes late. And all of a sudden that's the culture. And then when you get finally ticked off about it and say something, people are like, what? This is just what we've always done.
Thoroughly confused.
That's not their fault. That's yours, that you didn't set the standard and articulate why it matters and then hold people accountable to it. So what a great point that is. I love that. Again, we want to be kind, not nice. What a great thing to chew on. Great point for the audience. So you're there in the city of Troy. The next is you're going to become the assistant city manager in Grosse Pointe Farms. This is, again, population of 10,000. I think it's kind of in a similar northeastern city in Metro Detroit. It's right on the lake, right? Is this
It's right? Yes. So, and if you know anything about the Grosse Pointe, there are several of them. And if I say them and I miss one, someone will get mad at me. But this isn't the one that touches Detroit. There's a barrier between Detroit and Grosse Pointe Farms. Grosse Pointe Farms is known for the Ford mansions. So it's very affluent, a lot of money, and yacht club and all the things. So it was another very different environment to be in.
So how fascinating, though. Again, this is one of the things I love where people are like, oh, they have assumptions. Oh, a 5,000 person city, a 10,000 person city. But like you say, it's kind of like I had Doug Schultz on a number of months ago. He was a city manager up here in Medina, which is
Oh,
where
yeah.
all the rich people, Gates and Bezos and all these people have their McMansions, right?
Yes.
And yet you look and it's like, oh, it's a city of like 6,500 people. Like that can't be
Hmm.
hard to run. It's like, do you understand the
Oh,
politics?
no.
It's like
Yes.
your entire, he's like, this is city council meetings where you don't have residents show up, you have lawyers show up. And he's like,
Yeah.
it's a different world. So to have to manage that. So again, I love that here's different things you have to manage. And now you're not the assistant to the city manager. It kind of gives you, I'm sure, even though you have to do hard things like fire people, there's some coverage there. Now you're
Yeah.
the assistant city manager with probably
Yes.
responsibilities and real weight. Talk about what that looked like to serve in that city in that new role.
Yeah. So Grosse Pointe Farms, great community, great structure. I can't say enough great things about it. Not the right fit for me. Definitely just a different type of expectation, a lot of white glove concierge that I, again, my core is not about that. I don't know how to really put a word to it. I really want to be a public servant to the entire community. I felt like I was a public servant to the wealthiest people in the community. And not, again, a great community, good for them, nothing against it, just not the right fit for where my heart and where my core values are.
I think it's such an important, again, back to the discovering who you are, what your skills are, but also what kind of context you want to be in. And I love
Mhm.
that your story continually goes back to your values. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people can look at and go, oh, self-awareness is knowing my skills, which is an important thing about you, who you are and, the things that you're good at. But I love how like there's something deeper and that's your values. And that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that if you choose to work in a place like that's wrong. I don't think that that's that, we're not trying to be the moral police of what values are right. It's like what fits you and your makeup and the way you're wired to serve, the way you see the
Yes.
world. And I think
Yes.
that's why again there are different cities for different folks. And
Yes.
you had to, I think that's an important thing. I love that you brought that up to go, oh, okay, here's another city. But here's something that doesn't quite align with who I am and the mission I want to be on. Let's find a city. And that's where it's okay to find your place. If you're
Mhm.
either young or maybe you're not young, maybe you've just always been in that place because it's comfortable, and maybe even talk about that. I'm sure there are moments in your story where it might have been comfortable to stay and
Sure.
comfortable to just go, oh, I know this position. I know this, this is, yeah, I could do this. Instead going, let's find the right place, right? And
Yeah.
you take that again, that's going to lead you to Napoleon, Ohio. You're going to go to Ohio, and again, I know that these kind of states are close, but it's a different place, a different, I'm sure, even the same kind of, what is Grosse Pointe Farms is about 10,000, Napoleon's about 8,800, so very similar size. But talk about the difference now in, we're going to go from North Detroit to Southern Detroit. Talk about the difference in these cities and the difference in, and you're going to be the city manager. That's right. You're now you're just switching cities, a little bit of state. One of the things too we talk about is the positions and how we've had some military on, and they talk about the biggest change from going from the military to city local municipalities is standard operating procedures.
Oh, yes.
There's none. Like every
Yes.
city, even neighboring cities operate totally different than one another. You have different
Yes.
elected forms. You have city managers, administrators, all these kind of.
Mhm.
What was it like to go to a new place, new state, and now you're in the top seat?
Yeah. So I had a crazy, this is that competitive person in me. I had a crazy goal of being married, have kids, and be a city manager by the age of 30.
Yeah.
So I was a city manager by the age of 30. I was not married. I didn't have kids. But so Napoleon, I was 30 years old. Um, it's about 10 minutes from where I grew up. So I was aware of it. I kind of knew the culture. I understood fully that I was walking into, again, a culture that may not appreciate strong women leadership. Um, and in that time, I thought, well, easy peasy. I'll just show them, right? I'll just, yeah, I'll just work until my fingers bleed and they'll understand that I'm awesome because that's how it works. Didn't quite work that way. I did work until my fingers bled. The biggest difference between all of my previous communities and Napoleon is that they ran their own utilities. So they have their own water, their own sewer, and their own electric system, which is unique to um, Ohio and a couple other states, but mostly in the Ohio area. So a whole new thing to learn, how to make sure the water is safe, make sure that sewer gets cleaned, make sure we're not dumping things into the river that we shouldn't be. And then running an electric system, which if you've ever had the pleasure, doesn't make sense whatsoever. You just have to learn it. It's not really a science. It's kind of a human construct that you have to just kind of figure out.
Hmm.
So yeah, I just worked super hard and, you know, um, did all the things I thought you were supposed to do. And I forgot to pay attention to my elected officials. And I had about 13 people turn over on council in a 3-year period. And yeah, it was crazy. Like people were leaving town. And so they had to replace it. And um, it's just a lot of appointed. By the time I got close to the end of my tenure there were 4 people appointed, 3 people elected.
Mm.
Yeah, and it was a crazy environment. Um, and the things that I agreed to do with previous mayors, I forgot to communicate with the new mayors. And so I was learning a lot of people skills it's not just about doing the job. And it's
Mm.
not just about knowing how to balance the budget. And it's not just about running a good shop and having good people and having good morale and making the tough decisions. You also have to take care of your electeds and you have to be part of the community and you have to be out there so people can trust you. And that was a lesson I learned very hard in Napoleon.
It seems like I love that you're articulating these things because it shows there's I think, a big jump from the assistant city manager or department head to the
Yes.
city manager. This
Yes.
is a wild wake up call.
Yeah.
Because you think, oh, I get to, I just move, especially if you're an assistant city manager, like, oh yeah, now I just move up one chair and, now instead of being over half maybe the things, now I'm over all the things.
And now I don't have to work as hard, right? Because I'm the big boss and I can delegate it off to other people. Yeah, no.
No. Now again, the 3 heads of the big snake with their multiple heads, especially electeds are, every elected's got their own thing. They're usually elected for some reason, to embody, usually one thing from a community aspect. And yet with that much turnover too, like you're learning firsthand that communication to try to keep, and again, electeds, most of them it's not full-time jobs for them that, they're probably not even paid. And so this is what maybe even speak to, I always get to at the end with work-life balance, which I think is BS. There's no such thing as work-life balance for top level.
I'm glad you're just going to cut that right there because that's very true.
Yeah, there's not, how? Because here's the thing, those electeds, the only time they have to think about the city is at night. Your meetings are at night. So what are you supposed to do? Not come in till 10 in the morning? No, they're never going to put up with that, right? So that's the thing people don't understand is I'm trying to be the leader for staff that need me there when staff's there. I got to be the leader for the electeds when the electeds are there. I got to go out and actually connect with community to what's the pulse, where are they, what's going on, how do we, you are a representation of the city to the people from a staff level. And so it's just, it pulls at you in a lot of ways. And like you all of a sudden figure out like, wow, I didn't really give attention to that, which is kind of, on one hand, it probably felt acceptable because you're like, well, they got to figure out what they're doing. There's so much turnover there. It just feels kind of chaotic. And yet they needed, right, a steady hand of guidance, which is the kind of unique between a city manager and a city administrator. In a city administrator model, the mayor kind of tries to be some of that glue. The city manager's got to be that glue more so because, again, the electeds, the mayor's usually just kind of a
ceremonial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're learning some big lessons in Napoleon, and I brought it up too. Like again, this is only a decade ago, and yet like were you the first female city manager that they had? Yeah. Which again, we even think, we've just on one hand we can be encouraged because it goes, I think we're making some movement here. I'm always encouraged. Like I came into local government like just a handful of years ago, and I look and go, man, I interviewed tons of gals, and it's so encouraging. And yet like 10 years ago you were the first in a city. That's crazy to think about. It has its own challenges. Again, talk about assumptions. You're young, you're a female, oh man. You go from Napoleon to Painesville, Ohio. Yep. This is now you in the Northeast. You're northeast of Detroit. Now you're going to be northeast of Cleveland. Again, these are unique places. Being a suburb city of a major city is kind of unique. I'm sure that we could talk for a while. I'm sure about just the unique things that makes, expectations for residents to go, well, why we're right next to this big city. Why can't you do this? And but individuality, but we're Painesville, talk about what was it like to be in your second city and same role, city manager, population 20,000. So there's increase. And again, it's Cleveland now, not in Detroit.
Right. So the interesting thing about the Cleveland area is once you're on the east side, they kind of forget you're even part of Ohio. So we almost seemed like we were more of a Pennsylvania town than we were an Ohio town, right off of the lake. So, lake effect snow is a real thing. It would be 50 degrees one day and 4 feet of snow the next day. Just a huge learning curve on that, and making sure that the team was always ready for that. It was also a community that had full service utilities, so water, sewer, electric. And I think the interesting thing about Painesville that made it different was it was about 50% white and then 50% Hispanic and Black. So it was actually a much more diverse community than I had been working in Napoleon. And it was kind of around the first Trump administration. So having the fact that we had that much diversity in our town, there was a lot of fighting around sanctuary city, not sanctuary city, all that extra layer of fun that comes with those types of conversation. So it was just it was very different. New problem. What I will say about all the communities so far in my story is that they're all good people. And I think that's what we kind of miss in this world, in social media land and in the news world. We don't get to see or feel or hear that most people really still care. They really do still care about their neighbors, and they really do want to have a connection, a real human connection. And I definitely felt that in Painesville. It was some of my closest friends I met and still are friends with from that experience.
It's interesting that you brought up the reality of federal national politics then seeping into the local level. And I try to make that a highlight all the time.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't changed. It's probably only electrified.
Getting worse. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that the people don't realize that I think it comes back to assumptions. We've talked a lot about assumptions. People think, well, you're politics, you're the government. Why can't you fix this? And it's like, your local government has nothing to do with, right, whatever's happening.
I broke my magic wand. I don't know how to fix it. Sorry, guys.
And people don't understand as well, like a local government is fairly apolitical. Like it's your water, all those things that you mentioned, your power, your sewer, your trash. That's not red and blue. These are apolitical realities that we just have to deliver. And we don't want them to be political. We want them to be unifying. And that's why I love local government, is because it is a unifying reality to go, how do we live together? How do we be actual community and social and human? And yet there's incredible pressures that, and again, Paintsville, you're going to be the city manager during the pandemic, which I'm sure when you thought, you probably thought, oh, the election and Trump, and that was kind of that first, I remember when he was first elected the first time, that kind of brought some things to light, like, wow, we're really feeling like it wasn't just right, left, it was also kind of an outsider politician, coming in, and there's just a lot of unique variables. Then you have the pandemic, and goodness, I mean, that's what really drove me out of ministry. I just could not handle that. Maybe that's where I feel like in a local government, you're kind of like, we're just trying to deliver services. We're not trying to be left or right and wave a banner for either.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah.
As a pastor, people were like, you got to make it, you got to make a decision. I'm like, I'm not making, what does this have to do with anything? Like, this is not us. Like, and yet the pressure to do things that weren't even a part of really our job description, while you're trying to care for people. I think that's the tension is, maybe speak to, because it seems like you're a very passionate, mission driven, like your heart is in this, right? Your heart is in this work. And when you can be giving of yourself with so much heart and still no one really sees that work, there's no real appreciation for it. In fact, there's kind of visceral against you, or what feels like it's not just not appreciated. It's like, well, we don't like you. And it's like, why? It's
like, but I'm pretty great. I don't know why you don't like me.
Let me show you what I'm doing.
You need a hug? I don't like that.
How did you do it? How did you kind of work through that? And as a value-centered person, to not give into despair and into kind of hopelessness and just tap out. How did you work through that period of time?
Oh my. So just to add a little more spice to the situation, I got married in 2018 and I was pregnant when the pandemic started with my firstborn. So just to add, just a couple more fun things to the equation, I'm not going to lie and say that the job never gets to me, because it gets to me almost nearly every day. It is difficult to remember that people they care loudly, is how I always put it. It's not about me. It's more about my title than it is me. And so finding a way to separate that without losing the connection of my heart to my mind is still something I work on every single day. I mean, I don't have the solution. I wish I had, like, now on sale, this perfect pill that makes everything great. I can't sell it because I haven't figured it out yet. I've been a city manager for almost 13 years now, and I still struggle sometimes with just the complexity of the decisions that we have to make, and then someone coming in and trying to make it a black or white situation. And it's like, if it was a black and white situation, you don't need me, because you could AI it or Google it and it would tell you. It's not that simple. It's never that simple. And so, it's something I work on every day. Yeah.
It's such a good point that, like, again, we want missional people. We want, right? I think those are the best leaders, is those whose heart is in the work, and yet it has a toll. And I think that's why I'm such on a mission to, I guess, even though I'm not a pastor anymore, you just can't take the pastor's heart out of the work. I love people and I love leaders. And I think you guys do incredible work to not only shape communities, but shape organizations. Like the people who do that missional work, it can be a toll. And that's where, we're not throwing parades because our water turned on and our toilets flushed. We should be, because can you imagine living life without modern services? It's an episode of The Walking Dead in 2 seconds, right? If you don't have your city doing these things. And yet that's just not the reality. So, but it can burn you out pretty fast, I think, especially as the national and even the state. I mean, states are doing some crazy stuff now. It's putting pressure on the local government, and that's what, the more I get into the weeds of local government, the more I kind of get ticked off, because I'm like, it seems like there's just a lot of posturing. Like, I look at Florida right now, and like the governor's like, oh yeah, we don't need to pay. No homes should be paying taxes anymore. Homeowner.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I'm like, oh, how and what? Do you even know how local government works? I'm just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I just want to beat that guy's head against a wall. I'm like,
Yeah.
sure, that'd be great, but like, what about the services that they're taking? Like, water's still coming to your house, sewer's still being taken away, the fire is still going to show up. It's like people want points now more than they want to actually work
Yeah.
to create like thriving, and that's
Because it's hard.
it is hard because
It's
decisions
hard.
have to be made, right? You have to
Yes.
prioritize. Not everything can
Yeah.
just be, it's not just kind of willy-nilly unicorns and chocolate sundaes. And so that's why I appreciate the work that you're doing, and to lead during a time. Not only, again, I love that you shared you're pregnant.
I mean, why not?
I'm sure that was its own thing, just trying to go to
Yeah.
hospitals and trying to, and to lead. Goodness gracious. So again, I could talk to you for 10 hours, but I want to be mindful of your time. So you're in Paynesville, 2021 Westerville calls, and you
No.
become the city manager, and where you're at today. Tell us about what brought you to Westerville, and then tell us about this, again, northeastern, again, suburb of a city, major city, Columbus. Tell us about what makes Westerville, Westerville.
Um, Sorry, I'm at a coffee shop wrapping up.
Oh, no.
Um, so I met the community of Westerville through my electric work. Because of the electric industry in Napoleon and in Paynesville, I was able to sit on a joint action agency and work with other municipal electric systems. And Westerville was on that board. Super innovative community, very forward thinking. They really cared about the importance of like core city services, but also allowing a little bit of entrepreneur, a little bit of forward thinking. So as soon as I met them, I really wanted to be in Westerville. I thought that's actually where I was going to end my career. I was hoping that's where I was going to end my career. And then I was actually on maternity leave and I saw the posting and I was like, oh man, could we have picked a better time to have this posting? So, postpartum, dealing with all the things that come from that, in the middle of a pandemic, still running the city from home, trying to like get all the things. I made the decision to throw my hat in the ring because I did want to end up there. Telling my council that I had put my name in the ring was very difficult. There were a lot of tears on my part because I did love where I was. I did love the community, but I just really wanted to be in Westerville. And so went through the interview process and got the offer. And I've been here for 5 years now.
I was going to say 5 years,
Yeah.
coming, obviously you're in Paynesville walking through the pandemic, but it's one thing to then come into a city after the pandemic and to try to, figure out where are we? How do you still walk through? I always feel like the pandemic is so weird because I feel like we lost years. And I think it was
It's,
because we were kind of in this 2 week, we always kind of thought the end was right around the corner. And so we were always kind of in this state of anxiety and whatever it was that time is just weird. And so, and it changed. It made a fundamental change of how not only public sector, but private sector kind of operated and new expectations and work.
yes.
What was it like to come in now as the city manager? You're like, man, this is the place I want to be. But what were some of the challenges and what were some of the like things that now you're excited about being 5 years, out from day one?
Yeah. Um, so I couldn't figure out how to turn my camera on my laptop. So like the first couple Zoom calls were pretty embarrassing, but once I figured that out, I got it. I The community was very demanding about making a stand. Like, where do you stand on the pandemic? And so I learned very quickly that I'm just going to have to keep reiterating, like, where our professional ethics are and where my core values are, and that I will do whatever it takes to keep people safe. But I'm not going to make a political statement because that's not who I am and that's not what my job is. So luckily I got in touch with a lot of the government affairs offices for all the local hospitals and could make logical decisions about masking or not masking based on the beds at our hospitals. So when our local hospitals no longer had capacity, that's when I went out and said, guys, there's no more local capacity. We highly encourage you to mask up and, social distance and wash your hands. Um, it was kind of, it wasn't, it didn't make anyone happy. It didn't make either extremes happy. And so I felt like I was doing my job because I wasn't making anybody happy. Um, so it was just like throw into the deep end with no water in the pool and hope you don't crack your head, the first 2 weeks on the job, basically, and just hope you make it through. And luckily I was able to do that.
It's kind of in your story where, and again, that highlights an extreme where it's not really you, it's the title, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're the city manager, and so you're the top dog, so we need a statement. And again, people are just looking for validation, and I think that's one of the things, it helps me kind of, as you pull back from the situation and the emotional weight of it, to go, oh, people are worried, and they don't know, they just want direction, and they want to feel validated in their concerns. And safe, right?
Yeah.
And so there you are, you're trying to go, okay, well, how do we help? How do we give? And I love that you were like, hey, we're just going to do this by data. What's the data?
Right. Yes.
Where are the beds? Where are the...
What can I base it on?
Yeah. And like you say, sometimes the best leadership is when everyone's kind of frustrated because you know that, well, because I'm called to serve everyone, not just one side. And so, so good. Well, I want to be mindful of your time. I know they're kicking you out of the coffee shop.
Yeah, I know.
So
I have a construction project at home, so you don't want to be at home with me.
There it is. Well, you have such an incredible story. We have to have you back on again and to dive in. I'm sure you have so many more insights, but again, your story has so many good insights of what you've experienced, how to encourage young people to again dive deep into who you are, the values that drive you, and to be okay with when you find yourself in positions, situations where you're like, hey, I could serve here, but it doesn't really align with me fully. So where is? And I love that you're in a place now where you feel that.
I do. I'm really settled. I feel great. It's nice to have a community that I feel like they get a lot of benefit from me and I get a lot of benefit from them. And it feels like home. And that's a really, for a city manager, it's hard to do that because, you get to that 5-year point and you're like, I guess I should be moving on, but I don't want to move on. So I'll stay.
I love it. Well, Monica, thank you for sharing your life, your leadership journey, and your insights. Westerville is blessed to have you. And what a great story.
Well, thank you for having me. I had a great time.
The stories we share here on the Halting Winter podcast remind us where government really lives, locally, right here in our cities, our counties, the communities that shape our everyday life. If today's conversation resonated with you, please subscribe and share the episode to help these stories reach others. I'm Seth Winterhalter. You can find me at HaltingWinter.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.